Welcome back to today's episode. In today's episode of Heart-Led Hustle, I want to be talking to you about the ancient wisdom behind masculine and feminine energy and what this actually means for you in your business and in your life in general. We're going to start by just looking at, what does this term mean? And we're going to draw on Chinese philosophy, Taoist philosophy, as well as yogic teachings, and briefly looking at the concept of Ayurvedic doshas in order to get some practical modern insight onto what it looks like to be quote unquote balanced, and how do we actually take these concepts and apply them both into our lives and into our business. So to start with, some people have a bit of a, that they don't feel aligned, if you will, with the word energy, the term energy. So I'm going to introduce a different way of understanding that later on in today's episode. But for now, I just want you to remember that whenever we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, we're not talking about genders. We're not talking about men and women. In fact, all men have both masculine and feminine energy within them, and all women have the same, right? So we're not talking about genders here. We just refer to the qualities of these energy types through the terminology of masculine and feminine energy, right? Now, when we're thinking about masculine feminine energy, we can look to Taoist philosophy, and a really good example that many of you are probably very aware of is the yin yang symbol, right? That symbol where you have one side of it being white with a little dot of black and the other side being black with a little dot of white. Now, what does that represent? That represents opposing yet independent forces. Yin, the white side, representing, this idea of being more receptive, of coolness, of intuition, and yang, the black side, representing masculinity, activeness, structure, and logic. You'll notice that each side of the yin-yang symbol has the opposite color represented by a dot, and that shows us that each quality still requires a bit of the opposing in order to find a sense of balance, and then the two qualities coming together in a union to represent the whole, right? Now, if we look at Hindu Tantra and we look at the deities of Shiva and Shakti, it is the same philosophy, the same concept, where Shiva represents consciousness. He represents stillness, purposeful action, direction, right? Shakti is dynamic creativity. She is flow. She is life force energy, both inseparable and co-arising, and together they create what we would call like a divine union, right? And this divine union requires the other person or the other energy, to be present in order to execute the task at hand, right? So without Shakti, Shiva is inert potential, pure awareness, but without any expression, right? Without Shiva, Shakti is ungrounded energy. She is movement without direction. So in other words, chaos, right? Now, you want to think of Shiva as or masculine energy as like a container, or if you will, perhaps the riverbank of a river, right? It's the banks of the river, the structure of the river. And Shakti, or feminine energy, is the flowing water. So when the riverbank is there, it enables Shakti, or it enables the water to flow with ease, right? To flow with ease, to have direction, to not overflow, to not become chaotic. If the riverbanks weren't there, the water would just go everywhere, right? So this is what we're talking about when it comes to the qualities of these energies. I want you to think of masculine energy as structure, as systems, as like a vessel that holds something in order for it to express itself. It is discipline, it is boundaries, right? It is consciousness, it's logic, it's rationale. Whereas feminine energy is very much like creativity, intuition, being able to be adaptable, a nurturing essence, empathy, emotional expression, right? We're looking at basically, if you're converting this into business concepts, you would look at feminine energy as your soft skills, the soft skills in business, how you relate to your employees, how you relate to your clients, right? As a therapist, I would say that I am utilizing a lot of my soft skills, my feminine energy, when I'm holding space for another person. But then I'm shifting into more masculine energy when I finish my session and I am figuring out what I need to do and prepare for the next session. Or if I'm then working on, strategy within my business, which is very masculine oriented. So then if you think about, say, Ayurvedic principles or Ayurvedic doshas, for example, we can also see that even within the doshas, something like the Pitta dosha is more masculine in its quality. It kind of represents more ambition, precision, heat, right? Whereas Kapha is more feminine energy, nurturing, grounding, right? And once again, these energies are present in all of us. In traditional Chinese medicine, you can see a Chinese doctor and they will tell you if you have too much heat, right, in one of your organs or in one of your systems, or too much coolness in one of your organs or one of your systems. Now, regardless of which type of, alternative medicine path you're taking or what type of doctor you're working with, if they follow these types of principles, then they're always trying to figure out balance in the way of what do I give you or what do I tell you to do in order to create homeostasis. And so that could be if you have too much heat in your body, maybe it is introducing cooler foods, maybe it's doing yin yoga, maybe it's meditating more, maybe it's about the time of day that you go to sleep, for example. If you have too much coolness in your body, then it's about bringing activation and heat into your body. So that might look like eating warming foods, eating spices, incorporating spices into your cooking, eating more root vegetables, right? It could look like bringing more active movement into your day. So maybe it's waking up at a certain time and boxing, right, instead of meditating. I don't know, but it's this idea of balance. And when we think about balance, when it comes to the concept of masculine and feminine energy, balance is never about 50-50, like an equal 50-50 split. Balance is always about asking ourselves what is required in order to execute the task at hand, right? So if I'm thinking about the times of the day, right, morning through to nighttime, we know that when we look at masculine, feminine energy, the moon is associated with feminine energy, right? It's also very interlinked to our cycle, our menstrual cycle. Now, if I know that, then that means that nighttime is more feminine energy dominant, right? But there is still a very, very small amount of masculine energy within that, because the sun is still there within our universe, within our solar system, and it's still having a very minimal impact, but still an impact on the atmosphere. So it's still there, right? Now, as the moon, as the nighttime fades and the daytime starts and we start to move into dawn, for example, then the balance is shifting in order to fulfill the task at hand, which is that it has to be dawn time now. So what does that look like from a percentage perspective? That looks like all of a sudden masculine energy is increasing, feminine energy is still there in quite high amounts, because dawn still has that very cool, feminine kind of feeling to it. It's not the harsh sun, it's not the middle of the day heat in which masculine energy might be at its full peak if you're thinking about energy and the times of day. Now, same thing within our relationships, right? If I am in a relationship with my partner, we might by default, in the way that we coexist in order to create union and in order to create peacefulness, contentment, happiness within our relationship dynamic, we might naturally fall into certain masculine, feminine energy percentages, if you will, to create a balance of the whole, right? To fulfill the task at hand, being a happy, fulfilled relationship. Now, even within that relationship dynamic, you and your partner, I'm sure, will take the lead on different tasks, right? So you might be when you're just hanging around sitting on the sofa, or you're, going for a walk with your partner, energetically you might feel, more in your feminine, and maybe they are naturally more in their masculine, together creating a whole. But let's say you're more organized in some aspects of your relationship. So you're the one who organizes the shopping, or you're the one who organizes the doctor's appointments, or whatever it might be. When you're in that mode, for example, and you're sitting with your partner and you're taking the lead on, okay, like, what are we going to do today? We've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. So-and-so has a doctor's appointment at this time. We've got to go to the shops and buy this. That is you then taking on more masculine energy, whilst they are taking more of a passive feminine energy in order to fulfill the task at hand, in order to make that dynamic work, okay? So I hope this is making sense. And now that I've said it, you're probably going to start noticing where your energy shifts a lot. So like as a therapist, for example, when I'm sitting with my clients in therapy sessions, I am a lot more in my feminine energy, a lot more in that space of empathy, of receptivity, of being very open, trying to maintain a sense of groundedness, really offering that nurturing energy, versus when I'm sitting with my business coaching mentees, right? So if I've got my business coaching hat on, or I'm doing business mentoring with someone, I'm actually a lot more in my masculine. I'm a lot more strategic, and it's a lot more of a dynamic conversation where we're going back and forth, strategizing on something, right? Now, sometimes when I'm at work, I can be, say if I'm working on my marketing strategy, or if I'm having a meeting with my accountant, or I'm looking at my finances, I might once again be more in this kind of action strategy orientated energy, more masculine. But then I open my office doors and I step into my house, and I am immediately shifting my energy from work mode, right, of what I'm just doing, maybe more into mum mode, where I am, the balance is shifting, right? The masculine energy is decreasing, and possibly that feminine energy is increasing as I then sit down and start painting with my son, or we start doing something creative, or we're using our imagination, we're running around pretending to be Spider-Man, like whatever it is. I'm more in my feminine then. I'm not so much in my masculine, right? Now, when we're looking at this in business, I want you to translate this word energy into skills, right? So feminine energy is soft skills. So if you, think about it, if you're thinking about a whole organization, the HR department is your soft skills, right? It's like empathy, it is your ability to relate to another person, it's how you interrelate with your employees, it's emotional attunement, emotional intelligence, and then you're thinking maybe about marketing, right? Creativity, creation, coming up with concepts, using our imagination, like all of these things. And then if you think about the masculine, or the kind of strategy that supports that, we're thinking about the administration department, we're thinking about the COO, we're thinking about the CFO, we're thinking about, these structures, the accounting department, the finance department, the logistics of how do we then support the feminine energy or the soft skills in order to then transform that, or give that a place to then be channeled into to create the product or the service that we are offering, right? Now, I hope that is making sense so far. So when you think about your business, I want you to think about it from the perspective of, where am I more dominant, or where do I tend to be more dominant? Because this can also pose as a problem or as a bottleneck in your business. If you are someone who is naturally in your business a lot more in your feminine energy, and this often happens when you have had a business that's been a passion project for a long time. So you're not actually seeing your business from the perspective of business, right? You're not putting your CEO hat on. You are still like, oh, this is so much fun. Like, I love this passion project, and you're still kind of just in that creative place where it's fun to make the Canva templates, and it's fun to design this thing, and when I feel like it, I'm going to talk about this thing, and I'm just going to be very blasé about it all, in a way, like we talked about before with Shakti. It's like I've got all this emotional and creative expression, but I kind of don't have a channel for it. Like, it kind of just goes everywhere and anywhere, and it's very inconsistent, right? So oftentimes we can see people who are very much in this energy and they're trying to run a business that they want to be profitable. Now, when you think about that, it's like, okay, great. You have these ideas, you have this creativity, you have your brand colors on point, like, your Instagram looks very aesthetically pleasing. You have, maybe so many tabs open on your desktop with all these ideas for courses and, podcast topics and, posts that you want to write. Maybe you have reels that you've recorded, but they're all saved to Instagram, for example. Right? So all of these things, and then you don't do anything about it, right? So this then creates a lot of frustration for you, because when it comes to the actual doing, the consistency, the structure, the discipline, the showing up, it's like you then run away. It's too hard. And a lot of the time what this feels like when I work with people with it is they're like, oh, but I don't want to be trapped. Like, I don't want to be confined. There's this concept that, I'm going to be limited if I'm boundaried. I'm going to be limited if I'm consistent. My creative energy can't flow when I have boundaries. And that is just a block. That is just a belief that you're telling yourself, because your feminine energy is freaking out about being quote unquote controlled. So I would invite you to explore, where does this fear come from and why do you have this fear of being controlled? Are you anti-authoritarian by nature? Were you kind of told to fit into a box that you didn't want to fit into when you were younger? Have you always felt a bit misunderstood? Like, what's your relationship with rules? What's your relationship with boundaries? What's your relationship with structure, right? Because actually, when the structure is there, when the discipline is there, the boundaries are there, the systems are in place, the feminine energy gets to flow even more freely, because there is something supporting her. There is something supporting that expression. Now, when we see someone who is too much in their feminine, we might call this being in your wounded feminine, right? So your feminine is either it's completely like excessive in nature, and there's a lot of fear that comes from it. So we are making decisions that are wounded. Our feminine energy is wounded because it lacks the masculine energy support. So this might look like, people pleasing, for example. If you're thinking about wounded feminine energy, it might look like over-giving, undercharging. It will look like procrastination, self-sabotage. It'll look like criticizing yourself every time you post something, second guessing everything you do. So that can be when we are really out of balance and we are really requiring the structure and the energy of masculine energy to kind of pull us out of that. Now, on the flip side, if you are someone who's too much in your masculine energy, you're going to be prone to burning out, because you're constantly in this action-orientated energy. It's very much like fight energy, right? So if you're thinking about the nervous system, fight energy. Whereas maybe if you're thinking about the expression of the feminine in its wounded form, it would be kind of shut down, or it could be flight energy, anxiety, or fawning, right? People pleasing. Whereas when we're looking at too much of the masculine energy in business, you're too much in that fight freeze energy. So everything that you do feels like you have to hustle really, really, really hard. You micromanage your staff, you're micromanaging yourself, you are making really rash decisions that are not coming from logic because you're stressed out about something going wrong. You are working way too late, starting way too early. You can't put your phone down. You feel sick if you're not in your office, even though you have maybe nothing to do when you're there. You are over strategizing. You are not allowing room for flexibility. You're not allowing room for creativity. You're maybe too rigid. So maybe you feel intuitively that something's not right, but you're too stubborn to admit it, right? So this would be the wounded masculine, and it can look like being, like I said, burning out, hustling too hard. It can look like, having this belief that if I don't stop moving, if I drop the ball, everything's going to collapse. It can be very much in that fight energy, aggression, defensiveness, pushy sales tactics, coerciveness, manipulation. It can also look like perfectionism. So being really, really critical of ourselves and really engaging in that self-orientated perfectionism where we can be really, really hard on ourselves. And it's like every time we meet a goal, we push the goal further away without celebrating that. And so when you're thinking about what that type of energy needs, especially if we're prone to burning out, we need feminine energy to come in. We need to be able to connect back to our intuition. We need to find groundedness. We need to find softness. We need to find a connection to our emotions. We need to find a healthy balance between what is our emotions, what are our emotions telling us, what's our intuition telling us, and then also what is our logic telling us. So there's also finding this really healthy dance between the two, right? We want to be looking at rest, at slowness, at stillness, in order to allow messages and, ideas to arise. We want to maybe lean into creativity, into being more receptive, into being able to be more adaptable, in being able to trust more, right? So the feminine needs to come in to then create that healthy balance. So, depending on, and this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, I explore all of this in so much depth in my online business program called the Empowered Practitioner Method. And this is you get to keep this program for life. And it's basically a 4-month hybrid live and online learning experience where you understand everything about running a sustainable and profitable online service-based business, from mindset and subconscious belief patterns all the way through to understanding the energetics of business, all the way through to actual strategy, ethical marketing, launch planning, and execution. So it's this incredible kind of library, if you will, of how to create a business that feels really sustainable and really balanced. But from what I've just shared, I want you to, kind of sit back and ask yourself, where am I on the scale? When I think about how I am in my business, like, do I lack structure and discipline and strategy? Like, do I avoid, doing my accounting? Is my marketing really, really messy and all over the place? Do I actually properly plan and apply these skills of planning and execution when I know I'm launching a course or I know I'm launching a product? Like, am I using my logic and my rationale to look at my calendar and then, strategize my marketing strategy? Do I actually pre-plan things to make sure that when I'm speaking about something, it's all leading to that place so that my launch is as profitable and as successful as I would like it to be? Because if it's not, and if I look back at the strategy and if that's all messy, then of course that's why that felt messy too, right? Or on the flip side, are you needing to lean more into creativity, into trust, into intuition, right? Even this dance of masculine, feminine energy plays out if you are a female who has a cycle, right? It's important for you to understand that the dance, the balance is different when you're ovulating versus when you're menstruating, right? You are more in your probably masculine energy when you're peak ovulation. You're more action orientated, more confident, more willing to show up, more kind of quick-witted, whatever it might be. Whereas if you're on your bleed, then you're a lot more kind of, you don't want to be around everybody. You're more introverted, you're more reflective, you might be feeling more emotional, right? And so it's just understanding, how do I operate my life through this lens of understanding the dance between these two energy types, and in business, understanding my skill set, right? And the good thing about looking at masculine and feminine energy through the lens of skills is that we know that skills can always be developed. So if you're like, I know that I'm really strong in this skill set, but I really lack the skills of, let's say budgeting, right? You can learn that. It's a skill that you can learn, right? Same thing as if you're like, well, I really would love to lean more into my intuition when it comes to my business. That is also a skill. You can learn how to be more connected to your intuition by doing more nervous system based work and also leaning more into a spiritual practice, right? So whether it be masculine or feminine, I want you to think about what your business needs from you, where your bottleneck is, because usually your bottleneck, and what I mean by that, it's like where your business is maybe struggling a little bit. usually it's because of you, especially if you are like the face of your business, or you have a small business where you are the one making all of the decisions and you're the one who's showing up, you're the one doing the marketing, etc. Then usually the bottleneck is you. And then you want to ask yourself, why is this the bottleneck? Like, why is this happening? What skill do I not have in this situation? What am I needing, or what am I afraid of? Right? And then whatever the answer is to that will determine what your next step is. I'm so curious to hear what has come up for you from this episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below or send me a DM on Instagram. And if you want to explore any of the programs, in particular the Empowered Practitioner Method, where we do break this down into a whole module, then you can check that out in the show notes. And I will see you or speak to you in the next episode.